And we are kicking things off here. Episode 6 coming at you. This is a Let's Be Frank video podcast. I am your host, Jason Duhe. Alongside of me is head coach Frank Monica. We have a jam-packed show for you. We're going to recap some high school games, preview them, discuss some of the college matchups that occurred over the weekend. We're also going to have special guest Bobby April, who has a plethora of experience in the NFL and college game. Football 101 segment. We're going to talk 2-minute offense, and of course, we'll have our thanks for the memory segment. So we're going to bring on head coach Frank Monica. Coach, a lot of big things happened over the weekend, a few upsets, and high school football is right at that midway point. Season's already nearly over. Of course, you still have that second season, if you will, in postseason, but a lot of big games coming up and a chance for these teams to kind of reflect on where they are and where they want to get to at the end of the season.
Jason, it's really amazing because I think that the pre-district schedules are actually more entertaining than this district schedule, except for the Catholic League. I mean, you have a lot of big matchups in the pre-district schedule that people schedule really a harder team because if the district is real weak, sometimes they have to do that to test their own football team and test the mettle of their football team. So that's what we're seeing now. But it's certainly, as you said earlier, it's flying by. We're already going to week 6.
And, Coach, we're going to go ahead and start out in our recaps as we go ahead and start with prep talk. Coach, Riverside took on Country Day this weekend in an early kickoff. Thought it might have thrown off Riverside a bit. What would you take on that ball game as Riverside got the 31-10 win?
I was really surprised that Riverside was down 10-0 at halftime. Country Day is well coached, and as the coach stated in the paper, they only have 30 players in their team, and a lot of them go both ways. But I was very, very impressed. But knowing that Riverside was going to actually wear them down, they had attacker Elijah Davis, one of the best backs in the state, and not to be taken away from their quarterback because they can throw the ball. So the email kid, he's got a real fine arm, and so he can spin it pretty good. So I was not surprised that they came away with the win. Because what Country Day does, they schedule 4:30 games, and it really gets you completely off schedule a little bit. But I think Riverside is destined to be a team that you might see in the Superdome.
In our next matchup, we had Brother Martin taking on Edna Karr. The score shows it all. 40-7 win for Karr over Brother Martin. Brother Martin's a very good football team, but Karr has just been absolutely dominating the entire season, and they appear to be a runaway train in a crash collision with the Division I state title. They're a phenomenal football team. It's going to be very hard for anybody to slow them down and keep pace with them. Quarterback A.J. Samuel threw for 220 yards, 3 touchdowns. Karr took the opening kickoff to the house, and that's basically where the game went. They're an unbelievable ball club, Coach.
One of the personnel-wise, one of the best. And actually, again, Coach Bryce does a great job of coaching that team and getting them disciplined and things like that. And so that's a hard combination to beat them, especially when they play at Berman Stadium.
Holy Cross took on John Curtis. Coach, Curtis won 32-21. It looked like the big physical line, once again, the differentiating factor in this ball game.
Well, Holy Cross was leading at halftime. And Holy Cross, I saw them the week before. They're a very good football team. Unfortunately, they have a rugged schedule here. And John Curtis had to come back and actually scored a touchdown to go ahead with 3 minutes remaining in the game. And then Holy Cross tried to get back. They went down by 5, and they threw a pick 6. And that made the score a little distorted. But they were right in the ball game, and they were trying to go down for the game-winning drive. So give them a lot of credit. And I think that Coach Curtis said that exact same thing, his words with that. He said that how physical Holy Cross was.
Very physical ball club. Unfortunately, Holy Cross has just found their way on the wrong end of a few really tough games. St. James took on Woodlawn in our next matchup. 30-27 win in favor of St. James. Both teams played pretty good football. Woodlawn led 21-7 as they went into half. And Woodlawn even came back and took the 27-22 lead late with 3 minutes left as St. James had to make a push in that second half. St. James had to convert on a 4th and 21 on their own side of the 50 to put themselves in position to win the game, and sure enough, they did. St. James finds a way to win ball games. They're a gritty ball club. That's how they've been the past 15 to 20 years. When Coach Rick Gailey was there, they find a way to grind out wins, and another very impressive win for the St. James Ball Club.
Coach
And
Davis is a no-nonsense guy, Jason. He's a no-nonsense guy, and he's a very good football coach, and he's gonna get this team straight. And I guarantee you one thing: there'll be a team to reckon with because they're getting better each week. It looks like.
and that's how you want to play football. As you said before, you want to make sure you're getting better, improving on something each week, and they're hitting their stride at the right time in the season as they come up to district play. Next matchup was Neville taking on Rustin in our North game. 27-21, Rustin defeated Neville. A very back-and-forth ball game. It seesawed back and forth who had control and who didn't. An early stop by Rustin after trailing down 7-0 on fourth down. They drove it down the field and scored. But again, the game would kind of go back and forth. Fortunately for Rustin, they had control late in the game. They forced a turnover, which led them to go up 2 scores, and that was a differentiating factor. Both teams very talented. Rustin is a team that either you know for high school football and you're aware of them, or you're only paying attention to the big games because Rustin is proving why they are a force to be reckoned with. Beating Neville, they played with all the best teams in the state, Coach. They're right there.
Well, Rustin coached Chick Childress when I was a young coach. I watched him coach, and I thought he had one of the best football teams I'd ever seen. And then Coach Charlie Brown on the other side. So it looks like they reincarnated these two teams, and they're very, very good football teams playing on a different classification. But I just think that both of them could end up in the Superdome themselves.
We're going to go ahead and talk Scotlandville Rommel. Coach, what did you see in this ball game as Scotlandville ekes out the 1-point win over Rommel?
Did not see it, but talked to my son. He said, he had a hard time stopping them. They have an electric quarterback. He said, unbelievable football team. They lost to West Monroe in overtime, and I think the underrated football team. He said they have a lot of talent, a lot of speed. He said he didn't just slow them down to 5 yards. They were getting like 10 yards of pop on his defense, and at the end of the ball game, he felt like he had to go for 2. They scored at the very end of the ball game with 23 seconds left to go. So he went for 2 with a play action pass. He didn't convert. And, it's one of those things that we talked about earlier about should you go for 2? And that's something that you discuss with your staff prior to the ball game. I did it as a young coach myself, and it did not, in the semifinal game, it did not work. But, I've always I've changed my philosophy on that. I feel like that I want to see both sides of the ball play. And, but he felt like his team was tired. He took 70-something snaps on defense alone, and the offense only had about half of that. So I think that was the thinking in the ball game to go for 2.
We're going to go ahead and change gears and take a look at some Week 6 previews. St. Martin's taking on Riverside, a 5-0 St. Martin's Ball Club, a 4-1 Riverside team. Riverside has the leading rusher in the state up to this past weekend in Elijah Davis, over 1,000 yards rushing, over 16 touchdowns, has played incredible. St. Martin's has Harlem Berry, who is a phenomenal running back at St. Martin's. We're going to see 2 very exciting offenses, especially in the ground department, which is not something you can say about too many ball clubs when they run the football the way that these 2 teams do. But, Coach, you have to think it's going to come down to which defense is able to slow down the rushing attack of the other.
I think it's going to be more than just a running back. It's more going to be those 2 running backs. It's a team that's well-rounded, and I give the nod to Riverside here. They're well-rounded. They can play some defense, and they certainly can throw the football. So I think I give them the nod. Coach Gendus has done a phenomenal job there, and he saw this team coming. So he's taking his lumps there, but he also I'm happy for him to be where he is. But it's going to be hard to overcome a good Riverside football team.
You mentioned Riverside is probably a bit more battle-tested. St. Martin's, regardless how you slice it, outscoring opponents 206-36. Pretty impressive, as we're going to see how that game plays out. Next matchup, Newman, 4-1, taking on Belle Chase, 5-0. This is the best Belle Chase team that they've had in years. They feel really good about the way that they're playing. But now you have to take on Arch Manning, the brand-new leading all-time passer for Newman. All 3 top spots belong to Mannings, which is quite an impressive feat for that family, and they have to be proud. But it's going to be interesting to see if Belle Chase can try to slow down this Newman offensive attack. I think
that Newman's going to do what they do. But, as good as Manning is, they have to run the ball a little bit more, be more balanced. And I think because soon people will take that away from them, not totally. But, Belle Chase is a ground-oriented team, and they could actually control the football. I just don't know if they have enough to stop Manning and company. But Coach Stu would have a very, very good plan, and I think they're rolling right now. Just remember this, though, it's an important game, but you don't win championships in October.
Very true. As we head to Santa Maria taking on East Ascension, when you mentioned the magnitude of games, East Ascension, Santa Maria is no secret. It's one of the biggest rivalries in the state. Neither team is probably where they want to be at this point in the season, but this is always a great exemplary of what high school football is all about in Louisiana. Massive rivalry and some exciting ball game to see.
East Ascension is they had a great schedule. They have some men on that football team. I don't see how Santa Maria can overcome them, but the pageantry in this game and the excitement of this game, I mean, it goes on all week. There's something, and they do a lot of things together. As far as the parades and things of that nature and pep rallies, they do a lot of things together. But there's a big, big rivalry here. It's really fun time to be in that parish when this game comes around. They dress up. The kids in school dress up something differently every day. I mean, it's really, really a lot going on with it, and it's more than just a game. To me, it's an atmosphere in itself. It's almost like a carnival.
Looking at our next matchup, a Catholic League battle between Curtis and Rommel. Both teams come into this game 4-1. Rommel finally stubbing their toe in this season as they took their first loss of the year. Both physical ball clubs, both teams that want to control the pace and tempo of the game, and it should be an exciting matchup between these two ball clubs.
I think that the bottom line is, can Rommel stop their running game? I mean, and Curtis has thrown it better this year than they ever have in a long time. Can Rommel stop their running game and find a way to give the offense the ball and maybe create some turnovers? If they can't stop the running game, it'll be a long night for them. But on the flip side, Rummel's offense looks like he came to life a little bit last week, and hopefully that they can score with them. But it's another Catholic League war. I mean, so they played on a Friday. At least they both had Friday night games and had a chance to go with a 6-day preparation week. That's big.
Next matchup, St. Aug taking on Holy Cross. St. Aug comes in 4-1. They are taking on Holy Cross. Holy Cross had a few tight losses. Probably feel confident coming into this matchup. St. Aug has freak athletes all over the field. It's going to be a tough one for Holy Cross. But we'll see if St. Aug can continue on their upward climb, as we've seen them improve from week one despite the loss and forfeit win against Karr. They've played exceptional football.
I agree with you, Jason, that St. Aug is really a lot more talented than Holy Cross. But Holy Cross has got some people. They have a fine line. They have a nice scheme. They're very, very balanced as far as the running and throwing on offense. And their scheme on defense is really sound. So you have to beat them. And if he can keep his team motivated, and it looks like Coach Nick is going to do that, you can look for a possible upset here.
And that'll do it for our high school football segment. Let's go ahead and move on to our college football recap, as we're going to go ahead and talk about this LSU and Auburn game. What a game, Coach. Down 17-0. Coach Brian Kelly and his ball club find a way to fight back. They did what they needed to win the game. It wasn't pretty. Defense made a big play, changed the momentum of the game, as you've said many times. 3 big plays on both sides of the football. A strip sack for a touchdown was what they needed at that moment of the game. Only 85 yards passing and still managing to win a game is impressive, but you can't keep that up in SEC play. Too many good teams coming up, and even Coach Kelly said you cannot wait till the second half to play in these games. It already cost them once, and it'll likely cost them at least a few more times in the season.
I think, Jason, it's a remarkable job with that roster he has, and I think it's still a depleted roster. It's a remarkable job for him to go into SEC's town like Auburn, who's been a traditional power for years, and win that game, especially being down 17-0 at halftime. That's remarkable for him to come back. I know he took a big play to come back, but as you notice, there have been some heroes that started to develop on that defense. That Perkins kid is going to be a phenomenal football player. They got some guys that starting to step up on that defense, and defensive end Olivari, whatever his name is, and I think he's really, really good. And for them to do it, and especially Daniels on the sideline in the fourth quarter there, for them doing it, Nussmeier came in. But credit to for LSU for coming back. And, I was impressed with the fact that they got down there late. They needed a 4th down and 2, and they ran the ball, and they got it. And so the offensive line is coming to life just a little bit. So it's a good time to be a Tiger, but yet there's a lot of football to be played, and as we're going to see this weekend.
And to take on Tennessee this weekend at 11 o'clock kickoff. I said this before this Auburn game. So many people were telling me LSU's win by double digits. It's going to be a big win. And I kept telling them, I've seen better LSU teams struggle with worse Auburn teams on the road. And the funny thing is, I predicted that it would be closer than the spread called for. But this Tennessee matchup is a game by all means LSU should lose on paper. In every stretch of the imagination, other than the fact that Tennessee ranks 128th in passing defense, which, to be fair, LSU has struggled in passing the football. This has the feel of that game that LSU should win, let me rephrase that. This has the feel of a game that LSU could win that they have no business winning. Because it's at home, I just have a feeling like if LSU is going to pull a game, a big upset this season, it'll be this one.
Well, Tennessee's resume and who they play doesn't impress me and at all. But yet I think that quarterback is excellent. He was one of the guys at the man in camp. I think he's a playmaker, stuff like that. And going to Tiger Stadium, I'm very surprised at the point spread. I thought that Tennessee would be favored by more. By being an 8th team in the country, and you're only favored by 2.5, and but to a young LSU team, I just think that maybe the odds makers know something that we don't know. But I agree with you. I think LSU will battle here, but do they have enough horses to keep up with Tennessee? That's the question.
We'll have to find out Saturday at 11 o'clock. Tulane defeated Houston this weekend, 27-24 in overtime. A big win for Tulane, finding a way with their third-string quarterback to muster up enough offense, finding a way to grind out a win in overtime. Just an impressive win for Tulane and Coach Fritz.
It's unique about this. They lose 2 quarterbacks within an hour. The guy right prior to the game, Pratt couldn't go. Then the first series, Avietta goes in and leads them down to a touchdown and dives in the end zone. It looks very, very impressive. And then all of a sudden they go to Horton and, to go on the road and beat a fine Houston team who was a preseason conference champion pick, and to go there and they have a very, very good football team and to win. And I really thought it was strange that Houston win the toss in overtime. Let me back up. The overtime drive to get them to Tulane in overtime was tremendous. Coach Fritz called a shovel pass with 4th down and 3 on the goal line, and it worked to perfection. And he looks like the Messiah when he made that kind of call. And then they go in overtime, and Houston takes the ball first, which they win the toss. Instead of most teams will go on defense, and so you know exactly what you need. But they decided to go on offense, and they only ended up with a field goal. And then Tulane comes back, and on the wheel right out of the backfield, they throw their best player, and that Spears, for a touchdown. Phenomenal win on the road for Coach Fritz, and couldn't have been any happier for a guy. In fact, I texted him because, he was on the show last week, and I said, Coach, maybe you need to do our show every week. He said, maybe so.
Well, it's a big win for them as they take on East Carolina at home. Big game for East Carolina. Their 3-1 ball club, a chance to go on the road and take down Tulane. Tulane's playing very good football right now. And other than a very tight loss to Southern Miss, they played pretty lights out this season. So it'll be interesting to see if East Carolina can rattle the cage of Tulane. But at home, I think Tulane has a really good shot of winning that ball game.
They have 2 great linebackers inside. The defense is not getting the credit that they deserve. And if they can find a way to hold on to football, don't turn it over. If you just don't turn it over, you got a chance, I think, to beat East Carolina, even though they have a great quarterback.
Nicholls State took on Northwestern this past weekend. Despite Nicholls getting 2 possessions at the end of the first half, having a ton of opportunities, they couldn't finish the job against Northwestern. And, Coach, it's a rough loss for Nicholls as they're going to have to find a way to beat Houston Christian next weekend, who come in 2-2. Is just another rough loss for Nicholls, and they're still trying to find a way to get a win in the win, game in the win column and try to turn their fortune for the rest of the season.
My heart bleeds the way they lost that game. It bleeds for Coach Frebo because, no coach wants to lose a game like that at the end. They led with 3.5 minutes to go in the game. They led by 2 scores. and Northwestern went down the field and scored, and then the onside kick and got the onside kick and scored that game. So they scored 2 touchdowns within 3 minutes. So that's a hard pill to swallow as a coach. And but what do? You got to go back to work. You can't mope because it'll happen again. So you got to correct the things that you did wrong, and you have to do some soul searching. Sometimes you have to bring the team together and say, hey guys, this is where it is. I mean, still got some football left in front of you, so let's just pout and mope. Let's get back on the field. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you in this world. So get off your butt and let's get back to work.
Southeastern defeated Murray State 48-14. Big win for Southeastern. They continue to win ball games. They take on Texas A&M Commerce in this upcoming matchup, but Southeastern continuing to put up points on the board, finding a way to slow the opponent down defensively. Very good football team, and they're going to be in the thick of the conversation when it comes down to conference title later on this season.
They just moved up in the top 25, which Richard deserved, because we know they're a good football team, and I think you're right, Jason. They're going to be a team to reckon with, and they're a dangerous football team. It's because they can score points, and whenever you can score points and play a little defense and special team, you're going to have naturally that's all it is. Those 3 phases, but they really can score. They have an explosive type of offense, and they can make the big play at any time.
And moving on to the next topic, Coach, the New Orleans Saints dropped their ball game in London to the Vikings. A rough one for the Saints, and still trying to find a way to turn things around. But it seems like an entire issue throughout the organization, and we're going to see if they can get healthy. Is first of all, if they can get their players back on the field, and if they can start to win some ball games.
Well, Jason, there's a lot of controversy about the calls, and I mean, the one that really stood out was the one that Tyrann Mathieu. It wasn't so much that the number of penalties they had; over 100 yards of penalties. Is the timing of when they took place and how costly they were, because they kept drives extended, and that's, as a coach, man, that just drives you crazy. The third down extension, or maybe even converting a long 4th and long, or stuff like that. But and there's a lot of controversy about what is the pass interference in the NFL. I really don't know anymore, because I mean, there's a lot of hand fighting and arm barring and stuff like that, and sometimes it's called and sometimes it's not. So are they picking on the Saints? I certainly hope not. I just think that every crew is different. And some of them are a little bit more ticky-tacky about their calls, and some aren't. But, you got to love the way Dalton played. I mean, he certainly did enough to win the football game.
And unfortunately, one of your leading offensive players, Latavius Murray, gets picked up by the Broncos after he had a phenomenal game in a position of need for the Saints at the moment. So we'll see if they can turn things around and find a way to win some ball games as starting next week. But that'll do it for our first segment. But we'd like to thank our title sponsor before we head out of here. It'll be Accardo and Dufresne Law Firm. Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow service through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. When we come back, we're going to have special guest Bobby April. So remember, stay tuned. You're watching on Varsity Sports Now. Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverland's Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen. Starting in 1981 as an industrial vacuum truck company, A3M Vacuum Services has grown to be an industry leader in waste disposal services. Whether it's providing cleanup crews for plant maintenance or emergency crews for environmental cleanup and disposable projects around the river parishes and New Orleans, A3M Vacuum Services maintains the same level of personal customer relations and work ethic that founder Pat Sellers started almost 40 years ago. Proud supporters of Comet Athletics.
If you're looking for commercial or residential dump truck services, go with R&K Construction. This family-owned and operated business has great trucks and are big supporters of high school sports. Smoothie King in LaPlace thanks the community for 29 years. Through the good times and the toughest times, Smoothie King has been here to serve our guests. Whether you're looking for a keto-friendly smoothie, a recovery smoothie, or a healthy, refreshing snack, Smoothie King has you covered. Discover all the ways to be your best self and rule the day with Smoothie King. If you're in need of storage space at your home or business, stop by and visit with the good folks at Acadia LLC. Seth Boudreaux and his employees are there weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Give them a shout at 985-359-1333 or visit them at 1301 West Airline Highway in LaPlace.
Tonight, our special guest attended and coached at Chalmette High School and worked his way into the college ranks, having coached at Southern Miss, Tulane, Arizona, USC, and Ohio State. He also coached for 24 years in the NFL, specializing in special teams. He earned NFL Special Teams Coach of the Year in 2004 and 2008 while coaching for the Buffalo Bills. We'd like to bring on our special guest, Bobby April. And Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. And Coach, you coach special teams both at the college and the NFL level. What's the biggest difference between strategy and special teams between those two levels of football?
Well, when I went in 1991, there was a lot more strategy in the NFL than there was in college. Super amount more strategy. We had, there was different schemes, different ideas, different personnel, a lot of things we had to contend with that in college, we kind of ran our stuff. We scouted their stuff, but it was a lot more complex, a lot more complex. And the game has changed a lot since when I coached. I coached the secondary and I coached special teams at USC. But the game has changed so much with the rules. And there's a lot of things that were being done then that, you can't do now. And it's really a lot simpler than it used to be, both NFL and college.
Bobby, let me back up just a little bit to go back when I remember way back in 1979, we just lost a graduate assistant over at Tulane. And
yeah.
I remember Larry Smith coming in and he asked us, he said, guys, we just lost our Arden Liusa. He said, we're looking for a graduate assistant. And Vic Umont said right away, he brought up your name. And he looked at me and said, yeah. I said, so I think Vic contacted you first. And before you know it, you had a great career. You came in there at a great year in 1979 when we went to Penn State. Played against Penn State in the Liberty Bowl. And you remember Lindy and Fonnie. And I remember Lindy picking your brain because you had Southern Mississippi. We were about ready to play Southern Mississippi, and you were a former secondary coach at the time at Mississippi State. And you asked me, and I think you talked all about. I remember that very, very vividly about the flow rule, and so from there, after we won, your whole career just took off when you went to Larry Smith with Arizona. Do you remember?
Well, yeah,
those times?
Coach Smith was really good to me. He really I mean, he created my career because he hired me at Tulane when I was actually a graduate assistant at Southern Mississippi. And when the opening came, it came late, like in, I don't know, June or something, right? Mike Clark had left to take a JC job in Arizona in June, and you guys were without a guy, and Artie Liuzza and I were teammates at Chalmette. So Artie had given me a heads up, and of course, Vic, grew up around St. Raphael. This is a New Orleans crowd, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
He grew up around St. Raphael, but then he moved to Chalmette. So he probably had a little Chalmette Mafia bias by recommending me for the job, because there was a lot of guys that could have got that. But not only was I very fortunate to get on that staff, I probably coached the best player on the team, Rodney Holman. Now, there were a lot of good players on that team, but he may have been the best one. And I don't want to bore anybody in the audience or you guys, but there's a funny story. I went for the interview. I tell you how late it was. It was at the high school all-star practice, and that's in August, right?
That's in August. Mm-hmm.
That's in August. And
I
met Coach Smith at one of the practices for the all-star game. You know, it was at LSU. The clinic was at LSU. And he said, "We'll come in on Monday or Tuesday, whatever, and I want to interview you and talk to you about the job." When I got in there, Miss Fritz, who was a longtime legend at Tulane as the secretary, she said, "Well, Coach Smith is not here." And I went, "Oh, man." He didn't show up for the interview. I got no chance, And so anyway, he goes, "But Coach Infante wants to talk to you." Well, I had been on defense always. I played at Nicholls State on defense, and I coached defense, and I was a GA on defense. And I go, "Lindy Infante, and he was a legend, really, even then. He was such a good coach. And he really didn't even talk to me about football. He just wanted to get to know me. And I guess Coach Smith had given him the go-ahead to make the hire. When I got home, I drove back to Hattiesburg because I was still a GA at Southern Miss. My wife asked me how I did. I said, "Oh, man, there's not a chance in hell that I got that job." I said, the head coach didn't even show up. I said, and then I talked to the offensive coordinator, and I don't really know anything about offense. I didn't. So I did. There's not a chance in hell. And then no more than, I don't know, half an hour later, Coach Smith called and offered me the job. So Vic's recommendation was pretty strong, and Lindy was pretty good to me. Of course, Larry Smith was as well.
No question. And Bob, from there, you went on from there, and he offered a couple of us to Arizona. You one that took him up on his offer. And from there, you just had a great career with him. And from Arizona, then he went to USC, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. How long were you at USC?
I was with him 4 years. He was there 6 years.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Ohio State, but I was only at Ohio State during recruiting because Coach John Cooper was the head coach at that time. And I had told Coach Cooper that a couple of people were talking to me about going to the NFL if they were going to make some staff changes, because this was in December and they were still playing, so they weren't going to fire. It's not like today. They weren't going to fire anybody during the season. So I told Coach Cooper that, and he said, "Look, if you get an NFL job, you take it." So I recruited for Ohio State, and then I went to Atlanta right after signing date. So so I wasn't at Ohio. I never really coached at Ohio State. I recruited for them, but I didn't actually coach. I had a great opportunity. We wanted to, my wife and I. We really wanted our kids to be raised outside of Los Angeles at the time. And thought it was better. And of course, Columbus is a great town, and it's a great program. And it was just such a win-win for me.
Right. Well, people don't know.
Pardon me?
When you and I talked yesterday, I didn't realize that you were one time on the staff of Dennis Allen. Expound on that a little bit.
Well, I was I had interviewed out there, and I'd interviewed a couple other places, and I really have a bias and an affinity for Dennis Allen because I really think he's a tremendous, tremendous coach. And when I went out there and interviewed, I never knew him, and I had been around the Raiders the 4 years I was at USC because Brad Leggett was the son of Earl Leggett, the LSU coach.
Yeah,
and Coach Leggett had coached there at Nicholls State for a year when I was there, and then Al Davis just loved USC. He just loved USC. He had coached there in college with McKay as an assistant, and he just loved USC. So we were the only people in the world that had access into there. And I knew it was a really unique organization because the first time I went in there, the guy that greeted you at the desk, it used to be all women that greeted you at the desk. They had no women in the building. And the guy that greeted you at the desk was an LAPD motorcycle, like captain or whatever. And he'd after that he rode around with the Hell's Angels or whatever, something to that effect. But he had all the, he had the chain to his wallet and he had the tattoos and everything. I'm like, oh, holy mackerel, this is the secretary. Geez, this place is different. So when I visited out there a few times, and then when Dennis called, and I never knew him. I really knew nothing about him, because he really rose fast. He was a kind of a part-time coach at Atlanta, and then he was an assistant defensive line at the Saints, and then he was a secondary coach for just a short time, and then of course they won the Super Bowl, and then he became a coordinator at Denver, and then just 1 year, and then he was a head coach. But I was so impressed with him on the interview. I just thought this guy really, really is just, he's going to be lights out. And everybody asked me about him. Of course, we were here in New Orleans, so they all want to know about him. And I always say, I don't know what the results are going to be, but he's going to do a great job of coaching because because he did a great job at Oakland. He did a great job at Oakland, and he got fired, but he did a great job. I mean, he was a head coach deluxe. I mean, he really was, and I think he is with the Saints too.
I think Bob, you also mentioned the same thing, that you actually were analyst for Bebe Orgeron, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Well, actually, I wasn't an analyst. I was. We got to, let's get these terms right, Frank. I was a consultant.
Consultant.
I was a consultant. So, but I was an analyst too. I was there, 17, 18, 19. Then COVID was, COVID made everything really kind of screwy. And I went there. I only went to LSU 2 times, once in the spring and once in the off season. And then in 21, I kind of gave it up totally. But there's another guy, man. I think Ed Orgeron. I don't know how you could. The 3 years I was there, I don't know how you could coach better. I know, whatever falling out there was or whatever the results were, but man, when I was, I just think he's tremendous. I think he's tremendous. I think he's really, really, underestimated and underappreciated for a lot of things. Because he's got so much energy, people think that's all he has. And I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying my time around him, he was as fine a coach as anybody I'd been around. And I've been around, I counted the other day between players, coaches, and owners. I had like 39 Hall of Famers. And he was great. He was just great in everything they did, everything. So I got tremendous respect for him.
Bob, you're one of the few guys that have actually coached on the pro level. You've coached on the high school level. You've coached on the college level. And I mean, that's some. What is the biggest difference you see in terms of how they handle kids or staff or things like that?
Well, there is a difference. There is a difference because like I taught as well as a lot of people did besides when they were in high school. So I was dealing with a lot of kids. They were 14 years old, and the oldest they would have been was 18 years old. And then the first time I was a coach in the NFL, we had 4 or 5 players older than me. So, there is a difference. But I think I can't remember if I want to credit Tommy Warner, who was a really, outstanding person down in St. Bernard Parish, or is an outstanding person down there. He was a coach, he was an administrator, he was a representative, he ran Nunez College. He told me one time, he said, do these 3 things and you're gonna be a hell of a coach. He said, when they can't learn, teach them. When they can't do it, encourage them. When they don't do it, confront them. And that's been the best advice I ever got as a coach. And I can't say I did that 100%, because I made a lot of mistakes, in the 25 years I was in the NFL, and I made a lot of mistakes. I always made a lot of mistakes, but I did try to do that and hang on that philosophy, and that has no age boundaries. That's the way to really do it. And the more you can be 100% at that, the better. Now it's harder, it's harder to confront, an all-pro player, a kid that's is having a Hall of Fame type career. It's harder to confront him and, be stern with him than it is, the kid that is on the JV and he practices with the varsity at Chalmette High. It's harder, but you have to do it. And I knew that was the best way to do it. So I tried to do it that way as much as I could, and that's the best advice I could give anybody.
And Bob, I remember one guy telling me that was an NFL coach. He said, really, you have to just manage egos. And he said, if you can do that, he said, you can become a successful coach in the NFL. And you handling special teams is even a different breed of cat, because you have to get guys from every position and they have to buy into playing special teams. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, that's true, because there's a lot of obstacles to their motivation to play that area. It's like in the movie The Bronx Tale. You only want to do what you get rewarded for. If you remember the kid, his dad was a bus driver. He didn't want to be no bus driver because, they lived in a, 2-bedroom tenement in New York. And he looks down the street and he sees all the wise guys in the mob. And, he wants to be a mob guy because he sees the cars and the money and the women and all of that stuff. So that's kind of how the NFL is with special teams. We had guys that, were really, really good players, but they always were minimum wage. And the kids that really couldn't play as well as they could on special teams, were making a lot more money than them because they were starters. So it's a real fine line there dealing with that. Now, fortunately, I was never any place that I had to deal anything with the ultimate reward in the NFL is the money. And I got in a little bit when it was still kind of team oriented. Like my first 3 years at Atlanta, I had the same special teams with a couple of exceptions, but not many. I could go down that punt team and tell you, and I had those guys for 3 straight years, with the exception of 1 or 2 guys. And my later years, I had almost a whole new team every year, because when they draft, hell, if a kid's drafted, he's almost going to make it because of what they've invested in him, with the money and the signing bonus and everything else. So there's very few draft cuts that get cut. And that means that guy that's played 7 or 8 years on special teams, that's not a starter, he's getting cut. So you had to deal with a lot of that stuff too. And I tip my hat to anybody that plays good special teams consistently, because it is a real challenge. But in terms of yeah, Frank, it is a lot tougher. It is a lot tougher, to step in the ring with Joe Frazier than it is, the kid that's the 12th grade, the 12-year-old Golden Gloves champ. So there's a difference. There's a difference.
Bob, of all the guys, you've worked with a ton of great coaches, and who's some of the guys, and what are some of the things that impacted you the most with some of these people that you've worked for?
Well, the guy that is really underestimated as a coach, I think, is Jerry Glanville. And I'm kind of prejudiced as well, because Coach Glanville gave me my first job in the NFL, and then he gave my son his first full-time job in college. So I have a tremendous loyalty to him. But I can, with that said, I can say he has an innate knowledge of football. He just really knows football, and he could see stuff on the field that I would have a hard time picking up on film. Now, that was my early years, but he'd see stuff on the side. He'd come down and go, tell Albert Shelley he's got to keep outside leverage on that, and tell, Scott Case he's got to get up the field. He'd say stuff that on the field that it was really hard to see. And he called, when he was at Atlanta, he called offense, defense, and special teams.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he called it all, and because he knew it all. He really did. He has such a, he's got, his personality's different, and when you have a personality like that, you have to win. You have to win. You can't go 500. You have to be in the playoffs. So, he was good. Really, I bring out him, but there are a lot of great coaches. The guy I was probably closest to as a friend, who's just a phenomenal coach, phenomenal person, was Dick Geron. I loved working for him so much, because he was so good of a person and so sound, but he had his own way of being stern as a head coach. And he was a unique guy that way. But I just admired him so well because like you talk about the egos of the players, you got egos of coaches too. And his was really easy to deal with. And of course, Bill Cowher's in the Hall of Fame as a coach, and I coached for him. So, there's Andy Reid. Andy Reid's going to be in the Hall of Fame. I coached for him. He's just a hell of a coach. I just said, I thought Dennis Allen.
That's a heck of a resume, Bob. The people you work for. There's some pretty good ones. Yeah, some pretty good ones. No doubt about it. Pretty damn good. So I got to learn a lot. I tell you what, I got to learn a lot from Mr. Rooney before he became ambassador at Ireland. He was there every day. And he was. I don't know. He and I got along. He'd come by. I'd talk to him. He'd talk to me, and he always had these sage words that he would drop on you. Like out of nowhere. He'd come in and say, Bobby, this NFL. He goes, we got 2 goals. He goes, a championship and a good payroll, and. Which he meant we got to bring in money. We got to make money. And he never let he wanted you to know that this was his side of it, was making money, and the way he was going to make it was we needed to win.
But he was great. He was great. He would come in, and he was so meek and humble, but he'd come in and go, this organization since the very beginning, we only want tough guys. We don't want a bunch of dapper Dans. Always remember that, Bobby. So those kind of things coming from him, because he's a legend. I mean, he's flat out legend, and his dad was too, and he learned it probably all from his dad.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot in common because Larry gave me my first chance. He came to Luttrell High School, and believe it or not, Bobby, he saw our stretching. He was impressed with the way we stretched, and he was very, very impressed with that. So we needed an opportunity. Buddy Geist, and naturally was one of my closest friends. Buddy, we worked together, and he got me to. So I'm indebted to Larry Smith today, and I never forget the story. We're going to play Penn State in the Liberty Bowl, and he walks in and said, "Frank, said, you like to go to racetrack?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Why, Coach?" He said, "Well, here." So he gave me some cash, put it in my hand, and said, "See you later." And I mean, I never forget that story, but he gave me my start. But Bobby, switching gears, let's just talk about your son. He's a linebacker coach at Wisconsin. How's he doing?
Well, they've had some news come out of Madison, Wisconsin recently, and that was that Paul Chryst, the head coach, was fired 2 days ago. And I think my son loved Coach Chryst. I mean, he went there. When he went there, that was a Wisconsin mafia. They were all Badgers. They'd all either played there or coached there, lived there, something. They were all Badgers, and he had no connection. But he had a connection to Jim Leonard, who's the defensive coordinator, because I'd coached Jim for 3 years. And I never talked to Jim about him, but Bobby was smart enough to call a couple of Bobby was in the NFL. He coached at Philly, and then he coached for the Bills with Rex Ryan. And Bobby and Jimmy had played with both of those teams, but he missed him both times. He missed him. But Bobby was smart enough to have a couple of players that he was coaching who were teammates of Jim's call for him and recommend him. And when Rex got fired at the Jets, and that's how he got the job.
That's great.
Yeah, but he's doing great. He loves it there. He's really sad that the head coach is gone, only because we're going through his wife. But when it happened, I sent him a text. I said, take care of business. He's the co-defensive coordinator. Jim Leonard was the defensive coordinator, and Jim Leonard is the defensive coordinator. I don't, there's a title in there for him, but he is the co-defensive coordinator. So I don't know what Jim's going to do with the staff now that he's the head coach or the interim head coach. But I sent a text to my son saying, take care of business, call us, call him, me and his mom, as soon as you can. And he hasn't called yet, so he's still taking care of business.
He'll do all right. Bob, one last question. We don't want to keep you all night. One last question. What do you like to see in the NFL right now? Is it the way it looks? I don't know if you like it at this present standard, or what would you like to see change in the NFL, if any?
Well, that's a hard question because I don't want to be critical of the NFL because, it was my livelihood, it was my son's livelihood, put all my kids through college. It means, it means so much. But, I can't help it when I was born. I was born in 1953. And to see some of the penalties for contact, and I know why they're doing it. I mean, I was a consultant in the league office for 3 years too. Those same 3 I was with Bebe at LSU. I know why they're doing it. I just kind of look at some of them and just think, man, that's a far removal from what I remember football was. But I know why they're doing it, and they have good reason to do it. And I think they have to do it that way. But that's the only when I watch a game, some of the calls on some of the hits, because it's so hard to legislate. I mean, and they're so inconsistent with it. And they come in such a crazy timing of the game, it seems. And that's the only thing I'd like to see is just maybe more consistency with kids getting called or ejected from games and things like that. Of course, now I'm talking about the, right. college as well,
It's like that in high school, Bob. We had a little on our podcast. We talked about the hits. And I don't know what you tell a free safety, especially on the shallow cross route. What do you tell a linebacker? The guy catches the ball and you're running right to you, and he lowers his head. You have no choice there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The play that stands out to me as big as any. Of course, I'm at LSU at the time, but the Devin White deal where he ran and kind of hit the quarterback. And then he was kicked out of that game and then kicked out of half the Alabama game. And I was like, golly, in a court of law, you could say, yeah, he did hit with his head. But for the game to go where that's a kid misses a game, 2 halves because of that. I don't know how you only asked me what I didn't like. You didn't ask me for how I'd fix it. So I'm just saying what I don't like.
Bob, listen, we thank you so much. You can get back to your family and maybe a 6-pack or 2. It's great to hear from you. And listen, you never change. No matter what, how successful you've been, you've never changed. You're still that same guy from Chalmette and still got that 18-year-old energy and enthusiasm. And I hope you never lose that,
Well, you didn't have to remind everybody that I didn't change from drinking 2 6-packs a night.
but thank you so much for being on our show, and please stay in touch, and I will see you hopefully at one of our ball games, because I think we have a mutual friend, Coach Willie Fritz, and I know he wants to see us again over at his game supporting him.
I am going to get to the Tulane game, and I'm sorry I haven't been there yet because, boy, what a job he's doing.
Amen.
I'll see you. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you
so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye.
We'd like to once again thank Bobby Abram for joining our show. Next up will be our Let's Be Frank segment, history-making events in baseball. Football 101, we're going to talk 2-minute offense, and our Thanks for the Memory segment. But before we go to break, we'd like to thank LSR for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast. LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets. Samuel Accardo Jr. and Henri P. Dufresne, your go-to River Parish lawyers. Experience, tenacity, and results. Sammy Accardo and Henri Dufresne provide comprehensive legal services in personal injury, hurricane claims, business litigation, successions, and estate planning. Our trial experience, know-how, and commitment to protect and serve our clients is unparalleled. We provide complete real estate, title, and escrow services through our affiliate, State Title LLC. The River Parishes is our home, and serving our communities is our passion. Based out of Gramercy, Louisiana, LSR produces Southern cane, pure cane sugar, which is only grown, refined, and packaged in Louisiana. LSR utilizes the latest innovations in technology, as well as ensuring the growth and stability of Louisiana's sugarcane farmers by integrating more than 800 growers in the industry's economic structure. Southern cane is available in your local Associated Grocers and Rouse's supermarkets.
Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance Services has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares for disasters before they actually happen. Starting in 1981 as an industrial vacuum truck company, A3M Vacuum Services has grown to be an industry leader in waste disposal services. Whether it's providing cleanup crews for plant maintenance or emergency crews for environmental cleanup and disposable projects around the river parishes and New Orleans, A3M Vacuum Services maintains the same level of personal customer relations and work ethic that founder Pat Sellers started almost 40 years ago. Proud supporters of Comet Athletics.
If you're looking for commercial or residential dump truck services, go with R&K Construction. This family-owned and operated business has great trucks and are big supporters of high school sports. Smoothie King in LaPlace thanks the community for 29 years. Through the good times and the toughest times, Smoothie King has been here to serve our guests. Whether you're looking for a keto-friendly smoothie, a recovery smoothie, or a healthy, refreshing snack, Smoothie King has you covered. Discover all the ways to be your best self and rule the day with Smoothie King. If you're in need of storage space at your home or business, stop by and visit with the good folks at Acadia LLC. Seth Boudreaux and his employees are there weekdays from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Give them a shout at 985-359-1333 or visit them at 1301 West Airline Highway in LaPlace. And welcome back to segment 3, our Let's Be Frank segment, where we'd like to thank our sponsor, Riverlands Insurance, for sponsoring the Let's Be Frank video podcast. Since 1972, Riverlands Insurance has been dedicated to securing the best insurance products and services available to protect you, your family, your assets, and your business. Our goal has always been to establish a strong relationship and partnership between you, the insurance company, and our agency, creating a circle of success that prepares you for disasters before they actually happen. And Coach, we're going to go ahead and dive in right into our Let's Be Frank segment, where you get to break down a topic that you want to discuss. Aaron Judge right now in Major League Baseball is just setting the world on fire with his ability to hit the long ball. As you mentioned, so many players and teams are more going after these guys who are big hitters, but you had Ohtani last year, who was an incredible pitcher and hitter, something we hadn't seen since the days of Babe Ruth. And now we're having Aaron Judge, as some people say, being the first player to do this the clean way, setting the record in the home run mark. What is your opinion on Aaron Judge and what he's been able to do offensively in the game of baseball in this day and age when you have these pitchers?
I think it's a tremendous feat anytime you can hit, especially nowadays, because he's got 62 home runs. As of Tuesday night, he has 62 home runs, and he overtakes Roger Maris. Roger Maris, I personally saw him hit number 49 in Cleveland, and I mean, it was a tremendous night there. I think I was 10 or 11 years old when that took place, but nowadays, when you look at what Judge has done, it's phenomenal, because the next guy I think is like, he's not even 40 yet, and then Schwarber. And I mean, so the bottom line, the number of home runs that he has hit is incredible. Now, it doesn't hurt to be 6'7" and just a modest guy. But you remember now, Barry Bonds at 73, and everybody talks about, well, he had steroids, and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, they also had 70. But the bottom line is, I don't care what you're on. All those guys had an opportunity to be in the same stuff. Barry Bonds did it with a lot less at bats than anybody else. I thought, in my opinion, Barry Bonds was probably the greatest hitter of all time, because they didn't pitch to him. And you look at the number of times, the number of bats he had, official at bats. So, but let's not take anything away from what Aaron Judge done, especially into nowadays when all you've seen is specialists and pitchers. You've seen a pitcher go 5 innings, then here comes the mid reliever. Here comes the guy in the 8th inning reliever. Here comes the closer. So, especially that day and age, I mean, he's always seen a 97, 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So, hats off to Aaron Judge.
You're not wrong about the differentiating factor in at bats. Barry Bonds intentionally walked a ton more than Aaron Judge, but as you mentioned, you can't take anything away from what he's accomplished this season. An incredible feat, and to be able to do it as a Yankee, as kind of continuing that legacy of long ball hitters as Yankees, is just incredible. We went and take a look at our Football 101 segment, where Coach Monica brings in his experience from his 51 years of coaching. 2-minute offense. Coach, we discussed 4-minute offense earlier this season about how you usually use it when you have a lead in the game, when you're trying to drain that clock. Can you explain to people what's the difference in 4-minute offense and 2-minute offense, and when is it best utilized?
Well, number one, it's best utilized right before halftime. If you have the ball and you'd like to score right before halftime, or you want to kill it, you have to make that decision there. Or when you're behind right at the end of the ball game. It's called 2-minute offense, but really could be with 3 minutes to go in the game, or maybe less than 2 minutes. It all depends on that. And now the number one thing is, what do you need? Do you need a touchdown or do you need a field goal? And it's one of my favorite things to practice, because I think you can practice it for conditioning. And I want to see kids play fast. I want to see them think on their feet. I want to see it live. We did it every Wednesday before we left. Wednesday's your last padded day in high school of a practice. Thursday's just basically a short day. But so that's the last thing we did prior to going to the locker room and watching film on a Wednesday. So what it constitutes is really a play equals maybe 15 seconds. So if you figure it out, that's the equation that you like to go by. And you tell your players, okay, there's a menu. All right, guys, this is the menu. Now, the menu is decided. You might keep the same thing all year long, but sometimes it's decided prior to the game or during the week when you're doing your game plan. Okay, what's my first play in 2-minute offense? Sometimes it's a short route. Sometimes it's a hitch. Sometimes it's a screen pass. And we teach the receivers or backs, whoever it is, one, make sure if you do catch a pass that you go out of bounds. Now, they said, okay, you have to give them parameters. I think you have to think of everything. And our rule was, if you catch a pass below the hash marks, you run out of bounds. If you catch the ball in the middle of the field, you try to score or do as much as you can, and then get tackled and hurry up and jump back up again. Now, there's a menu that you follow. So it's hard to look at the sideline for signals. The quarterback must know the menu. You can actually, or if he does look to the sideline, as he have time, you can flash the play to him. It could be play number 2, play number 3, whatever you want to do. The other thing you do, you teach the quarterback never to take a sack in that particular situation, and he has to know what stops the clock and what doesn't. Okay, he has to know that. Okay, if you complete a pass, he has to hurry up and get his team to the line of scrimmage, and we call it throwing the fit. We ask our quarterback, you throw a fit, because don't rely on them really knowing. You give them signals and just yell out left and right exactly what you want the receivers to do. You teach the receivers not to change sides of the field. So if you're going 2 receivers on each side, they stay on the right and the other 2 stay on the left. Or if you got 3-by-1, sometimes you might flip the 3-by-1 if you have time. So you give us flip signal means you want the 3 receivers to the field and the 1 receiver to the other side. So basically you give the players those parameters to go by. And the quarterback knows that if he has to complete a pass, he has no timeouts left. And we always practice it, by the way. We always practice it without any timeouts left, because that really makes them think faster. And if you have the luxury of having one more timeout, then that's fine. But we also have to have a code word to tell them to spike the ball. Now, some people you can use spike, you can use kill. And in other words, what you tell everybody, hurry up and run and freeze. Don't move. You tell the offensive linemen never to get down. They stay in what we call a 2-point stance or a tall stance, and they stay there. And the quarterback is now allowed in high school that he can spike it from a gun formation. So I much prefer to be underneath. So you get the ball faster, you can catch it and just spike the ball down. At one time that was not allowed, but now you can. And but you have to have a code word, and everybody's yelling. And like I said, the quarterback is throwing the fit. He's yelling out and screaming. And you want to get people to play as fast as they can. Remember, 15 seconds can go pretty fast, but it's not very long if you complete a pass and the guy has to catch and run with it. And but the bottom line, we've been on the other side of the equation sometimes. In the heat of the battle, I remember a game we played not long ago. I think it was within the last 5 years that I coached. 3 times, one of my players in the 2-minute offense, 3 different players caught a pass, did not go out of bounds, not one time. And so it ended up costing the game. So all those things must be taught. You have to go through it as fast as you possibly can. There's a menu. The players know it. Prior to every ball game, they know this is your 2-minute offense menu. Now, if you have a timeout, or the clock stops, you have plenty of time to gather your thoughts and maybe call a play. What we always did is call 2 plays in the huddle first. So you call 2 plays at a time, and the quarterback knows, okay, this is your first play, this is second play, but he also echoes that second play again. So providing that you completed the first pass, then the second play is automatically run according to what you called in the huddle.
Thanks, Coach, for catching us up on the Football 101 segment. We're going to go ahead and move on to our Blitz the Ball Coach segment, where we have someone to ask you a question. Coach, this one comes from someone you know, might be on air with you right now, me. What I wanted to know is last week we discussed so much about the letdown after a big game. And my question to you is, how do you keep your team focused after a big win?
Well, I remember George McIntyre when I was at Tulane. Vanderbilt had just beaten Alabama, and it was a huge, huge upset. And I remember Coach McIntyre, we talked to him, he was playing us and said, Coach, what'd you do to get the attention of the team again? Because, pats on the back soon become kicks in the seat of your pants. We talked about that. He said, we hit one another. I said, what do you mean? He said, we scrimmaged this week. He said, I wanted to get their mind off of it. And I think that's important. So you have to find a way to get their attention. You have to find a way. You might have to take an extra meeting time or do something different. Because let me tell you, the community, the fans are going to pat them on the back, tell them how great a job they did. The media is going to get involved in it. The name's going to be all over the social media, especially nowadays. They're going to be on TikTok. They're going to be on Instagram. They're going to be in all these things, the Facebook things, and they'll be still celebrating, and they'll forget there's another game. We've seen it happen time and time again. We actually knew that when Tulane beat Kansas State that they might have a slight letdown in Southern Mississippi, and that proved to be true. And I've always professed that your highest highs, your lowest low. So you have to do something different, whether it's extra meeting time, an extra practice structure, something that they don't like, something that, it was my job as a coach to make them feel uncomfortable. You had to make them feel uncomfortable. If they felt comfortable, in other words, they were ready to get defeated, because there is a formula for failure and there is a formula for success. And I used to preach that all the time. And the biggest formula is that complacency. Complacency is your enemy. So you cannot get complacent as a football team, as a coach, because it's easy for a coach sometimes just to sit back and say, man, I'm proud of myself, proud of the team. And then all of a sudden he thinks the same thing's going to happen. Listen, in football, every game has a different emotional level. Every game has a different intensity. And that's why you don't play this game with computers. And it's not a PlayStation game. You still play with human beings.
Thanks, Coach. And we mentioned a ton last week because of how many upsets there were, and my lock of the week was one of those, and we might just see that crop up once again in my lock of the week. But we're going to go ahead and, before we do go to lock of the week, we're going to go ahead and hear our Thanks for the Memories segment. Coach, this week you want to discuss your 1983 Riverside state title.
Yeah, there's a story behind this, and the guy that I'm indebted to today, he probably kept my career alive, because I almost left coaching at the time. We had been released, the whole staff was just released. We had just beaten LSU, and Coach Vince Gibson was the head coach, and he was relieved of his duties, and the whole staff naturally had to find another job. And I got a phone call from Barry Hills. He was the principal of Riverside Academy at the time. He said, Coach, listen, I know you want to stay in college. He said, but just in case you would like to come here, Coach Fernandez would step down as the head coach and be your assistant. And I said, man, how commendable and admirable was that for him to do? How unselfish was that? And I just said no at the time. And I had something on the West Coast, a college job that fell through. Then I had something at SEC. That college job fell through, and the guy promised that they'd bring you in for an interview. It didn't happen, and lo and behold, he called back, and I said, Barry, I think I'll do it. And Coach Fernandez, and Barry was actually the AD principal guy, and Coach Fernandez was my defensive coordinator. It was a tremendous relationship with all three of us had, and Coach Fernandez, I brought in some defensive packages that he loved them because he was a very, very intelligent guy, very organized, and had a lot of success himself as a coach. So that team that first started, it was really funny because it was 1983 season, and I said, well, guys, we're going to platoon. And the guy said, how are you going to platoon? You only got 30 guys on your team. Well, I said, we'll find a way. Two school board members came, sit in the office, and I said, Coach, you can't platoon. We've never platooned. I said, well, we're going to try to find a way. And we, all of a sudden, because I really feel strongly about platoon football. And so all of a sudden, we ended up with 55 guys. We had 8th graders playing on the football team. And I don't mind telling you, early on, our first scrimmage, we actually lost the first scrimmage. But early on, we struggled. We were winning games, but basically on defense and a little bit. But we had guys, a quarterback was a guy by the name of John White, who's now coaching on the staff now. Bruce Mohorn was a linebacker, Chad Lupin. Thanks to Robert Email, who prepared a book for me about this season. It wouldn't be for Robert, I wouldn't remember a lot of this stuff, but the book told the whole story. Rob, thank you so much for doing that. But we were winning games by maybe a touchdown or two. First 7 games we struggled, but we were still 7-0. All of a sudden, about game 8, 9, and 10, we started rolling. Our offense started rolling. Our defense was shutting people down, and we played. I think we played some teams that were a lot better than we were. But because of the platoon system, we were allowed to play a little bit more, and we were getting better. You can see that the team was getting better in all phases: special team, offense, and defense. We started to hit our stride. John threw for over 1,000 yards, and Chad had actually. He had actually over, I think 1,213 yards rushing. We had some good players. I had a little nose guard. He was 5'4", weighed 160 pounds. I mean, he couldn't even get in the rides at Disney World. He was 5'4", 160 pounds, but he played his buns off. He stayed low, was in a root hall technique most of the time. After that, we got in the playoffs, and in the playoffs, we started to roll. We beat a team that we weren't supposed to beat. We had to actually go to Monroe twice. And we threw a pass. We were losing 7-0 going into the fourth quarter. 6-0 going into the fourth quarter. We throw a pass to a guy by the name of Decaro. He tight end. He catches the ball and he runs for a touchdown. We win the game 7-6 for the semifinal game. Then we come home and we play the state championship at home at Riverside. It was an exciting night. The people were all over the place, and we actually won the game against a very, very good Cedar Creek team. I think we socked them 24-7. We had 72 offensive plays in that ball game, and it was just our platoon system was really taking off. And, we were sorry that the season ended, because we thought it would be really good. We had guys, Miller Robinson on the staff, Gary Zarang, Mickey was part of the staff and as a young coach and helping out with the JV and Rustin Bouchot. And we did some good players. We had some very, very good players. Kevin Duhe was the punter, and he ended up going to ULM. I think he ended up and as free safety, and he ended up with a 43-yard average in high school, which back then was unheard of. We had a lot of good players on that football team. A Clivert guy with Sanamo, a Geiger guy. Jason Roussel. Like I said, Bruce and Robert. I teased Robert. He couldn't run very fast, but he was very, very smart. Joe Abraham. So I'm really indebted to Coach Fernandez and Barry Hilson. And after that, I didn't stay there long, stayed for one football season. But it was a great time. We had a great experience there, and the guys were just hard-nosed people, and it'll be one of those memories I'll always remember. And seriously, I think thank Coach Fernandez for probably keeping my career alive.
Thanks, Coach, for sharing that about your past. We're going to go ahead and move forward to Lock of the Week. Coach, we've had some ups and downs over the course of the season, to say the least. But who are you liking this week in your Lock of the Week pick?
I haven't looked at it closely, but I'm going to take Wake Forest. I really like Wake Forest, and I think it's time for them to produce. I can't believe I took Texas A&M last week, Jason, and I thought Texas A&M was the lock. I cannot believe with all that talent that they're in that position that they're in, and now they're in a must-win situation. And I feel badly for Coach Fisher because he's an excellent football coach. I don't know what's changed there, but I do know that they're a very good football team.
I'm going to go ahead and stay in the ACC. I like Duke over Georgia Tech, 3-point favorites. The thing is, Georgia Tech just pulled a game off that they shouldn't have won, had no business winning in Pitt. I have zero confidence in this Georgia Tech ball club. I know little to nothing about Duke, but what I can tell you is they are a pretty good football team, and I don't have much faith in Georgia Tech. So because of that, I'm going to take Duke -3 in this week's Lock of the Week for me. But, Coach, that'll do it here for us. Any final thoughts before we go ahead and read the socials and head out?
Well, guys, I just think, pull hard for your team. Be a fan and not a critic. I think that's, they don't need critics. They need fans. Pull hard for your football team, no matter what. Show them that support the coaches, because they work. I don't know of any coach that doesn't want to win. And they do whatever they can. Sometimes a parent gets disgruntled, about, well, my son didn't get enough time, he didn't get enough carries. But I remember a quote. I remember Archie Manning telling me one time, said, "There's only one ball to go around." So if you win, everybody wins. Everybody becomes all state and all district when you win.
All right, Coach, that'll do it here for us. So before we head out, we'll go ahead and shout out our social media pages. Go ahead and follow us on Facebook at the Let's Be Frank Video Podcast. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the LBF Podcast. And that'll do it for us. For those, just to let you guys know, we won't be here next week. We will be back the following week. And again, make sure to tune in as we bring you more football both at the college, high school, and the NFL level. So thank you so much for joining us. So for Justin Thomas, for head coach Frank Monica, I am Jason Duhe. And remember, let's lay ball and let the good times roll.
God bless you.